this one is ready to go, and the other two. Yep. And so here's one.
I can drag them over to you,
Okay.
or should I
And
take
then
them up there?
I will get these connected.
I hate holding them. They're on.
There, 119. There we go. Okay. Sync. Good. All right.
More issues today.
I think, well, you may have answered that.
Should I do anything with this right now?
I am literally about 5 seconds away from being productive.
I will be patient. It's not my strongest suit, but I can work on it.
138. Sync. Okay, sync again.
And they were missing Holmgren and Jim Williams and somebody else too.
Why is that not syncing? Oh, good. It did. Okay. And then test, 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 test. Great. Test, test. All right, they're all good. This is 1, so the podium,
Okay.
and then 2 and 3.
Good to go?
We are. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I'm going to speak from the podium. Yeah. No problem.
I'm on the short end.
That's okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Stride, president of the City Club of Portland. I want to welcome you to our Friday Forum. We're not hearing back there. I'm going to start over. I'm John Stride, president of the City Club of Portland. And we're delighted to have all of you here this afternoon for our Friday Forum series. And it's my honor and the honor of City Club to welcome Secretary of State Tobias Reed.
Thank you.
And we are pleased to have Julia Shumway, editor of the Oregon Capital Chronicle, to join us for this event. Secretary Reed and Ms. Shumway will discuss the existential threats to Oregon's election systems and the diverse responsibilities and challenges of the Secretary of State's office. Before we begin, just take a minute to silence your cell phone, if you would, please. Thank you. Now a word about the City Club of Portland. City Club's mission is to inform members and the community in public matters, leading them to appreciate the responsibilities of citizenship. We accomplish this through producing nonpartisan, public forums, debates, and research that informs them about elections and public policy. City Club is committed to providing a space for civic dialogue that encourages respectful discussion and positive change. It is the City Club members who provide the ideas, lead the discussions, perform research, and plan programs that address the issues of importance to our community. Let me tell you about a couple upcoming events. On November 18th, we'll host Multnomah County District Attorney Nathan Vasquez with moderator Ken Boddy right here at 6 o'clock p.m. at the University Place Conference Center. And then on December 5th, our Friday forum that day at noon will be Treasurer Elizabeth Steiner and former Treasurer Randall Edwards here at the University Place. Put those two on your calendar. Secretary, you might want to attend that one too.
Former treasurer, yeah.
Oh. Okay. To learn about other upcoming programs, visit our website at pdxcityclub.org/events. And to support our mission and participate in City Club's work, become a member. You can visit cityclub.org/membership. And if you join today, we'll take $40 off your membership annual dues. Use the new 40, that's capital N, capital E, capital W, the number 40. And that will give you the discount. Or you can use the QR code that you'll find out at the desk. For developing today's program, we offer special thanks to Kayla Kennett, City Club's Communications Director, and to Shoshana Baird and the Program Committee for attending to all the details that are necessary to put on a program like this. There you go. We'll give them. Now just a moment to thank our season sponsors who provide us the funds to rent this venue, to have the video folks join us and record this. And those are AARP Oregon, Chevron, Fight Against Sex Trafficking, and the Don Sterling Fund at the Oregon Community Foundation. We thank each of these sponsors for their generous support. Again, thank you. Now let's turn to today's program. Oregon Secretary of State administers diverse elements of state government, including overseeing elections, registering corporations or business entities, resolving governmental-related complaints for small businesses, maintaining state archives, and acting as the state's chief auditor. The Secretary of State also serves as one of 3 members of the Oregon Land Board and as chair of the Oregon Sustainability Board. Also notable is that if there is a vacancy in the office of governor, the elected Secretary of State becomes the governor, as occurred in 2015. Secretary Reed is Oregon's 30th Secretary of State. Born in Montana and raised in Idaho, he moved to Salem, Oregon to attend Willamette University before earning a master's business administration degree at the University of Washington. He brings a wide range of public sector and private sector experience to the office, having worked in the U.S. Treasury and at Nike prior to his election as state representative in 2007 and state treasurer in 2017. Editor-in-Chief Julia Shumway has worked for the Capital Chronicle since its founding in 2021. She previously worked as legislative reporter for the Arizona Capital Times in Phoenix and reported on local and state governmental politics in Iowa, Nebraska, and Bend. An award-winning journalist, Julia also serves as president of the Oregon Legislative Correspondents Association and treasurer of Oregon chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. We are grateful to have these 2 distinguished Oregonians join us here today. When you registered, some of you submitted questions that you would like us to ask today, and Julia may ask some of those. After the discussion today, City Club members, as a privilege of membership, may ask live questions by going to the microphone that we'll have on the side of the room. If you aren't a member, but you'd like to ask a question, you can join right now on your phone or to go out there and join, okay? Now, I turn this over to you, Secretary Reed.
Thank you. I'm expecting that everyone is going to be using their phones and starting in line right away for the questions, and I'm looking forward to those very much. Well, first things first, I came to say thank you. I came to say thank you for being here and for caring. Oregon is a stronger place when more people pay attention, when we show up for each other, for our communities, and that is obviously what keeps our state alive and vibrant. And I have to tell you, I walk into a room like this and I feel a lot of inspiration and hope, because Oregon's future, the one that my kids are going to inherit, the one that your kids and grandkids are going to inherit, are not written in Washington, D.C. They're not even written in Salem. They are written in rooms like this by people who refuse to let apathy take hold or to be overwhelmed. So I'm here to say thank you, because you all are the ones who are going to move our state forward. I don't want to take up too much time talking at you today. I am very much looking forward to the smart questions that Ms. Shumway is going to ask, and to the questions you are formulating and joining the City Club in order to ask in person. So I want to make sure we get to that. But I do want to set the stage a little bit. And if we have not had the chance to meet already, a little short introduction probably makes sense. And John covered some of this already. But I worked at the U.S. Treasury. I worked at Nike. I came here as a college student. And before I was elected as Secretary of State, I served as your state treasurer for 8 years. And that was a really useful experience, because while we were at Treasury, we were not just focused on managing money. That was an important part of our responsibility, of course, but we wanted to do creative things to make government actually work. And I'm proud of a lot of things that we did at Treasury, but one thing in particular that I think is a good example of that is a program known as Oregon Saves. 150,000 people now who have retirement accounts who didn't before, giving them a chance at a retirement with dignity. And I think that's a useful example, because it's using creativity and following through and executing so that people's lives actually get better. But as a result of being treasurer, I sometimes hear people say, well, you're a numbers guy. And I think that's true, but numbers only matter if you do something with them. And I think we can probably all agree that the numbers right now say that Oregon's government is not doing enough to serve the people right now. How do we feel about that? Is that a fair statement? So we've got work to do. And that it's worrisome, because I think people are losing trust in our system of government. And that, frankly, is why I ran for Secretary of State, because this office really sits at the heart of the relationship that Oregonians have with state government. And we have to make sure that we are delivering results, whether that is running secure, fair, and accurate elections, and let me be clear, we do, whether that's publishing audits that root out waste and strengthen accountability, whether that is registering and facilitating the success of businesses and nonprofits in Oregon. We do that as well. And preserving our state's history through our archives and making sure that it's accessible to people. You heard about some of these things that we do. All of those have a big relationship on the way Oregonians interact with state government and whether or not they have trust in what we are doing. But my philosophy, I think, can be summed up with three pretty simple words. I want to make sure that we are doing all this work with integrity, with accountability, and with competence. Those are easy words to say, so I want to tell you what I mean. Integrity means no special deals and no shortcuts, no matter who you are or who you know. Accountability means honesty. We're going to tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. We're going to make mistakes, but we'll own them. We'll tell you about them. We'll tell you what we're doing to avoid them and how we're getting better. And competence means the program, the office, the website, it better work. It has to work. Good intentions don't matter if you can't actually deliver. And it sounds basic to say those things, I imagine, but it is not. This number may shock you as much as it does me, but when I think about it, since 2015, Oregon has had 8 secretaries of state. 8. And that is not something that promotes consistency and stability. It's leadership whiplash. And so I'm here to bring stability, to bring professionalism, and restore confidence and really to deliver results. That is important because we have got a number of big challenges in front of us. We've got to protect our election systems from all kinds of threats, whether those are from foreign actors or even, I hate to say it, our own federal government. We have to work at the local level to secure, to update, to modernize our election systems, including the building out of a brand new voter registration system and a brand new campaign finance law. We're making sure that we continue to run fair, secure, and accurate elections that earn and retain Oregonians' trust in an era where everything is a fight, where every mistake is magnified and even good faith efforts get weaponized. So let me go through some of the other things too. When it comes to audits, I am focused on building a new data-driven, risk-based model for selecting our audits and making sure that the audits we do are not sitting on a shelf, that they are used by policymakers, whether they are legislators or city councilors or school board members, to make decisions based on our findings and recommendations. The corporation division, we are focused on making that process of registration go more quickly and more smoothly. Maybe you will be the first group to tell me that someone in here prefers to deal with paperwork rather than running their business, but I haven't met anybody yet who's in that category. We want people to get through that process and get to work building their businesses and hiring people. We have also an Office of Small Business Assistance as part of that corporation division that can help identify barriers, receive and resolve complaints when Oregonians run into that kind of bureaucratic mess or barriers. In the state archives, there's a lot of work going on around modernizing and updating our records. They're actually in a race against time against something called vinegar syndrome. And if we run out of questions with Ms. Shumway or with you, we can talk more about what that actually means. But it's kind of a scary thing. All of this happens not only in a tough political environment, but in a tough budget environment, thanks in part to federal tax breaks for billionaires and chaotic tariffs that are making our economy something more than a little bit volatile. But I have never, ever been afraid of hard work, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get the job done. And we have a number of great leaders in our office who are going to help me do it. It really is our responsibility to make sure that we are delivering a government that works for people. And before I wrap up and get to the questions, I do want to make a comment on one of the toughest challenges that I think is facing our state at this moment. Not far from here, there is a single city block in Portland that has become a political talking point for a lot of people, many of whom have never set foot in this city or in this state. And it saddens me that the president and his pundits are using protests against their own inhumane and illegal policies as an excuse to deploy military forces against a peaceful American city. We have to be clear. None of us asked for this. None of us need it. It is an abuse of our National Guard. It threatens the progress that we have made downtown, and it's happening because one man is so insecure that he mistakes the citizens that he was elected to serve for enemies. I know a lot of people are angry, and I am too. I'm frustrated, but I want to remind all of you that there's something really fundamental for all of us to do in this situation. It's a 4-letter word. We vote. It is not a small thing. It is the cornerstone of who we are as a country, because in America, the government answers to the people, not the other way around. Our founders did not fight a revolution for our people to serve more kings and strongmen. They fought for a republic where power comes from us, the people. And every ballot cast is a declaration of that freedom. Every vote says this is our country, and we will determine its future. So no matter what happens with the deployment of troops in Portland, I know that our state is going to keep standing up for the rule of law, for the Constitution, and for our rights as Americans. And I know we're going to keep showing the world. We're going to keep showing the world that Portland is a beautiful city where we're all just trying to live our lives in peace. My ask to all of you is to remember that the most powerful thing we can do in this moment in the months to come is to vote. Thanks for listening. I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have. Are you ready? All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for those opening comments. I'd like to continue establishing.
We might not have it on. Let's see.
Okay.
This one works.
Better?
You got any? Here. Use this. I'll use the one on the podium.
Okay, is this better? Much better. All right, so I'd like to continue establishing this shared understanding of what the Secretary of State's office does, which you gave us a bit of an overview of. I think most people in this room would know that you're the Chief Elections Officer, the Chief Auditor, but what don't we know? What are some common misconceptions about the Secretary of State's office?
What an interesting question. I think I would start with the fact that while the technical definition you gave is right, I'm the Chief Elections Officer, it's not that we are doing the elections in the Secretary of State's office. And this gives me a chance to talk about one of the most fun aspects of my first months in office. We made a commitment early on that we were going to go visit every one of the county clerks in their offices in their counties. This is the City Club. So how many counties in Oregon? 36. Look at that. I've never been in a room with so many people who answered it instantly. That's exactly right. So I'm proud to say that we have now been to 35 county clerks. We're going to get to Lake County next month. We were on our way there, and the weather didn't cooperate, and so we'll get there in the next few weeks. But every one of those county clerks, these are the heroes of democracy. And maybe this is an answer to your misconception question. We view them as our partners and our customers. We want to make sure that they have the resources they need and that people understand the challenges of their job. These are the folks who tally ballots, who maintain voter rolls. And there are a lot of things to talk about them, but they are succeeding with nothing more than duct tape and determination in a lot of cases. There's one clerk I remember in particular. It's a commentary on where we are. She was proud of the fact that she had gathered the funding to install bulletproof glass in her office. That's enough to pause. That's bad enough. But then in the very next breath, she sighs and looks up and says, but there is a gap between the top of the bulletproof glass and the ceiling where someone could throw an incendiary. These are not abstract things. These are offices that have received white powder letters and very serious threats. So I think there's a misconception about our specific responsibility. We are also partners and supporters and allies with the county clerks around the state, and people should not forget that.
Yeah, and continuing on the subject of these meetings you've had around the state with county clerks, I vote in Marion County. I think many of the people in this room vote in Multnomah or Clackamas or Washington. We're all in pretty large urban counties with large teams and a lot of resources. How does that look different in the other areas that you visited?
Very different. You're right. The large counties that you mentioned are relatively advantaged in terms of their capacity, both human and physical and technologically. I've visited a lot of county clerks' offices that are in the corner of an antique, maybe a nice way of saying it, courthouse with single pane windows and one entry exit, and maybe they have to take ballots across multiple floors, in one case down the street from an annex. These are all things that county clerks are working to have the resources. They have different kinds of relationships with their county commissions too, where their budgets often come from. It's a widely varied state and a widely varied set of circumstances, and that's part of the case that we have to make to the legislature that they are worth investing in. You're going to have a program with a couple of treasurers. I'm a former treasurer, as you know, so I'm telling you that's a good investment in our democracy to make sure those clerks have what they need.
All right, continuing on with elections, the Trump administration recently requested voter data for all Oregonians, including some really personal data, things like our full names, our dates of birth, social security numbers, driver's license numbers. And you were very firm in saying no and telling the Trump administration that you don't trust them in the best circumstances to protect our personal data from leaks, and that at the worst, you fear that they will use that data to violate Oregonians' rights. Why have you taken the position that you did when some of your colleagues around the country have been more willing to provide this kind of data?
Well, first I want to compliment you on your diplomatic description, both of my actions and of the president's actions. It wasn't that they requested, they demanded, I would say, and it came in kind of a funny sequence. You can imagine how this narrative went. So we first got an email from them asking for you can detect the sarcasm as I describe this, a conversation about a partnership and looking for anomalies and conduct and so on. And we said, no thanks, not interested in that for a lot of the reasons you articulated. We don't trust you, you don't have all of that sort of stuff. And then we got a different letter, which was less a request than a demand, and you're totally right. It asked for a lot of personal information that they do not have the authority to possess. It's dates of birth, it's driver's license numbers, it's partial social security numbers, those sorts of things. And before I said no to that, I reminded them they are entitled to the same public information that any other Oregonian is. If they would like to fill out the form and pay the $500, we'll gladly send them that public information. We didn't hear anything after that. What we did hear eventually was a lawsuit. And until earlier this week, I said that I am looking forward to making the case to protect your privacy in court, pause, when the shutdown ends. Now I can adjust that because the judge in Eugene, I think, got frustrated and denied the U.S. Department of Justice's request to delay that case. So we're going to get to make that case much sooner than I thought.
And just to follow up on that, part of the case that the federal government has been trying to make is that a lot of that data is already provided to a third-party group, ERIC, and you can remind me what the acronym for ERIC is. But can you explain what makes it different if you're giving encrypted data to a group to try to check and confirm whether there are duplicate registrations or people who maybe moved and didn't tell election officers versus handing all of that information over to the federal government?
Yeah, so ERIC is a system that multiple states participate in to make sure that if a person leaves one state and moves to another, that duplicate record is discovered and dealt with. And the mechanism that system uses is encrypted. So it says, here's a record, we can put all these in, compare them blindly, but it does not mean that anyone gets to see the individual identifiable data. And that's, as you said already, not only does the federal government not have the authority to possess this information, it's the state's responsibility, but we don't trust them what they will do with it and how they will use it. So it's not accurate to say that we are giving this information to a third party. We have a mechanism to make sure that it is not duplicated across states and jurisdictions, but that is protected in a very serious way in that process.
All right. Continuing with another aspect of Oregon's elections where we differ from the current federal government, Oregonians have voted by mail for a quarter century, and many residents are really proud of that legacy. We saw earlier this year when the legislature considered a bill that would have repealed it, the backlash to that legislation was so strong that it broke the legislature's website for a few hours.
That's something to be proud of, I think.
But despite the strong feelings many Oregonians might have in favor of voting by mail, we're seeing threats from the Trump administration with an executive order that the president signed earlier this year, and from a group that is trying to collect signatures to refer this to the ballot. What steps are you taking as Secretary of State to protect this method that Oregon uses to vote?
Well, I appreciate, this may sound sort of counterintuitive, I appreciate the fact, even though I disagree with it vehemently, the folks who are trying to gather signatures. That's the right way to go about it. I don't think it's a good outcome, and I think, as evidenced by the reaction to the legislative proposal, it will fail, but at least that is the right process. The Constitution, the president swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. I feel like he has forgotten Article 1, Section 4, which says very clearly that the time, I'm paraphrasing slightly, the time, place, and manner of choosing senators and representatives, the elections thereof, will be chosen by the legislatures. Notice there is nothing in it about president. Congress has the ability to interact with election systems, but they do that through laws, not through executive orders. The president does not have that power. And when he did issue an executive order on some other aspects of election law, we took him to court. That case is still pending. There's a reason I think that that he is pursuing this, and I do compliment the president for explaining where he got this idea about vote by mail. You may remember this. This feels like it was about 8 years ago. It was probably about a month ago. This time seems to pass in a different pace here. He said on television in an interview he got this idea from Vladimir Putin. So let's pause for a moment and think about the fact that our president is now taking election advice from the president of Russia, a president of Russia who may have some expertise in rigging elections. It doesn't comport. He does not have that authority. We are proud of our system in Oregon because it works. We deliver high turnout. We deliver low cost. We deliver security. We make sure that you don't sacrifice your ability to vote, a fundamental American right, because you're busy or because you can't afford it. Think about people who are working hourly jobs, who have kids. They shouldn't have to give up income. They shouldn't have to have the cost of healthcare. They shouldn't have to drive somewhere and stand in line to exercise this fundamental American right. Everywhere else in the economy, everything we interact with is heading towards more convenience. Why in the world would we take something that is the gold standard for holding politicians and government accountable and make that less convenient and more difficult? We are stronger when more people participate, and I think that's why people really love our system.
So Oregon has automatically registered people to vote for about the past decade, and one consequence of that is that especially young people are much more likely to be automatically registered as non-affiliated voters. We also have closed primaries, which means that those non-affiliated voters don't get a say in the elections that in many cases determine who actually takes office. Do you think that this combination of automatically registering people as NAVs and continuing to have closed primaries is working?
No, and I would not. I would separate those a little bit in the way you said it. I think the automatic voter registration is a good thing when it is executed well to make it more convenient for eligible people to vote is a good thing. The fact that we are doing that in this closed primary system, I think, is a separate question. And I do think probably, if not the number one, very high at the list of things we've got to figure out is that question, because the largest segment of the electorate is non-affiliated. And as you pointed out, that means they don't get to participate in the primary system, in the primary process. That's a big part of our process. So not only is it not sustainable, I think it makes it much harder for us to say to those kinds of folks, yeah, we know you can't participate in the first part, but we really want you to participate in the second part. As proud as we are and should be of our high voter turnout, 75% in the last presidential election, that means 25% are not voting. And we got to do better at that. So there are a lot of ways to address that. You can pick any number of methodologies from across the country, but I think we need to have a conversation in Oregon about how those people who don't want to affiliate with a party can have a role in our primary system. And City Club might be a good place to have that conversation.
So Oregon was a leader on the national stage with a lot of election reforms, like being the first state to pass vote by mail, like being the first state to have automatic voter registration at the DMV. But in recent years, we've seen other states and even the city of Portland surpass the state in some of these other reforms, things like ranked choice voting here in Portland and in the state of Alaska, open primaries in states like California and Washington. Do you see opportunities for Oregon to lead the nation in other pro-voting reforms? And if so, are those things that you would lead as Secretary of State, or that you feel like you should implement if voters and initiative groups proceed with them?
I've always liked what Louis Brandeis said about states being the laboratories of democracy, and I think we have a strong tradition in Oregon of doing that. The bottle bill and public beaches and retirement plans, all of these things are examples of what we should be doing. But I'd say where we are right now with the instability and the things that have been going on in the Secretary of State's office. My focus right now is on getting the fundamentals right, on being as unimpeachable on that execution as anything else. As I mentioned, we've got a campaign finance law to implement. We've got the voter registration system that was state of the art in 2007 to implement and update. So I am focused on that for the time being. But there is lots of room to talk about that, to talk about the innovations and advances we should be pursuing as a state, and I think we should not shy away from that role. We're used to doing this in Oregon, and we'll get back to it, I'm confident.
So let's talk more about campaign finance. To set the stage for people.
We're going to leave the room, Julia, if we start talking about this.
Sorry. To set the stage for people in the room, Oregon is one of very few states that does not currently in elections have campaign finance limits. You've probably all seen headlines about some Oregonians writing $1 million checks to politicians, something that would not be allowed in most states. Finally, last year, in the face of a likely ballot initiative, the legislature got together, passed contribution limits that are set to take effect in 2027. But in the waning month of this legislative session, your office asked the legislature to delay those limits from taking effect. Can you explain why you took that step?
Well, let me start by saying I want to get the influence of big money out of politics. And I appreciate the fact that the legislature passed this bill. I want it to be implemented well. I'm committed to that. I went before the legislature towards the end of session at their request to provide an update on our implementation. And what I told them was that we are facing some real challenges with this because the bill that they wrote, and this is not just me saying this, even the proponents and the people who worked on it and voted for it said it as the bill was passing, is plagued with a number of contradictions and ill-defined terms and things that we have to interpret. Even people who were involved in that will presently interpret the same exact text in diametrically opposed ways. We also do not have adequate funding to implement what they have passed. So my testimony to the legislature said, here's our situation. We need these technical fixes and we need this money. And we are going to be challenged on the timeline that you have laid out. That's the conversation we're having with the legislature right now. We are committed to implementing this bill and executing on it as best we can, but we need the legislature to provide those technical fixes and clarifications and the funding to do it. That's it.
And as we're talking right now, or earlier this morning, your office was holding a virtual public hearing on, or trying to collect people's feedback on the campaign finance law. What kind of information are you seeking from the public to help you implement the law as written?
Well, this is one of the beauties of our very participatory process. I mean, one good example are those terms where different people are interpreting the same text in different ways. So we're trying to understand how people react to the real world implications based on how we're interpreting things. I'm resisting the temptation to go down a rabbit hole here of describing some of the rather absurd things that might result from the bill as it is written currently. But we're trying to make sure that people understand what this means and how they think we should react to that, and as we're writing the rules to implement this. Remember, the law is passed, and then it's up to the agencies to interpret and write rules that implement the statute. That's what we're doing as we write those rules, making sure that we're having the feedback and essentially giving people the chance to surface problems with interpretations and implementation.
And at the risk of delving into territory that's a little too wonky for a general audience,
This is not a general audience, but I understand your point.
Why don't we have why can't we have a website that allows you to open more than one tab, multiple tabs, or see information more easily if we're looking at campaign finance? This
is probably one of the few rooms in which you can say multiple tabs and you get knowing nods and chuckles from the audience. That's a compliment to the City Club. We can. But like most things that are related to technology, it takes time and it takes money, and we don't have those currently. So as I said, we are absolutely committed to implementing and executing on this legislation. We got to have the time and the money to do that well.
So let's talk. Let's delve into audits. For recognizing this is not necessarily the general public, but some people watching online might very well be. What is the value of an audit, and how is what your office does different than what people might picture when they think of, say, the IRS auditing your taxes?
This is one of the things that I'm really excited about in our office, because audits are really an opportunity to narrow the gap between good intentions we all share and the execution that needs to measure up to those good intentions. The audits that our office does really come in two flavors. There are financial audits, with which lots of people are familiar. These are really verifications that the numbers are accurate and they're fairly presented. Those mostly happen on a regular rotation. They are generally scheduled and there's less discretion in those. The other flavor is performance audits, which are much more about whether an agency is operating efficiently, whether a program that the legislature designed is effective. And there is quite a bit more discretion in how those happen. So I think it is a very safe statement to say there's a lot more supply, a lot more opportunity to audit things that should be audited than we have capacity. Every time I talk to someone, they have an idea for an audit, and they're probably all meritorious, but we don't have the capacity to do all of them. So we are focused on building a simple and an objective way of choosing where we deploy that audit capacity. So we've chosen to focus that on risk. Where is there risk? These are thematically, it's stuff like where are we spending a lot of money and not getting the results that we want? Where do we have a history of bad performance? Where are we vulnerable to big disruptions, whether it's a natural disaster or a policy disaster? And finally, where are the lives of Oregonians really at stake? We have translated that into quantitative measures that can serve as indicators. And we put that data in. We're going to get an output of saying these are the agencies, the areas that we believe to be most risky, and we'll use that to target our capacity. But as I mentioned earlier, even if we do a flawless job at selecting audits and conduct fantastic audits, that's only part of the equation, and that's where we're going to need your help, because once we have these recommendations, we don't have the authority to enforce anything. We don't get to go and direct a department to do something as a result of our findings. That's the legislature. That's a school board or a city council, and we want to make sure we are shining a light on those findings, and we need your help to say to our elected representatives, this matters, and we want you to take this into account as you're making decisions on budgets and on policies. So I think it has great potential to improve the effectiveness of government, and that's something I hope you're as excited about as I am.
And continuing with audits, you have a long history in state government. You were majority leader of the legislature, you were majority whip, state treasurer. You've been involved in either creating through the legislature some of the programs that your office might end up auditing, or leading on this as treasurer. And you are also part of the same party that most of Oregon state government has been, with the exception of Dennis Richardson as Secretary of State for a few years. How do you ensure that politics and maybe personal loyalties don't play into the determinations that your audits division makes?
It's a very reasonable question, and one I take really seriously. That's why I'm so focused on the mechanism by which we will select these audits, so that it is not based on personal preferences or anecdotes or those sorts of things. Undoubtedly, people will have critiques of the methodology, and that's fine. I'm sure we will evolve and refine that methodology over time, but we want to focus it on that, not on discretionary sorts of decisions. And that's the extent of my involvement at that point. Then the selection happens, the audit is executed. I'm not involved in that. My job will be to point at those audits and represent it to the legislature and other decision makers, but I am out of that. It's a little bit like my role as treasurer. I did not make individual investment decisions. I helped open the door and let people make presentations and pitches to our investment professionals, and I could react to the process and ask questions and those sorts of things. But as the auditor, I have great confidence in our professionals and their objectivity.
So let's talk some about your approach to this job. While you were campaigning, and again, while you were talking to us today, you talked about how you want to bring stability to this office that has had more secretaries of state in the last decade than most states have had in the last 20 years. So you are almost a year into the term now. How is that approach and the attempt to bring stability, how is that going?
I feel good about it. I feel like it is, if I was asked to give myself a grade, so I have a daughter who's a junior in high school, and we got her progress reports this week, and we got some grades. I don't know if I would give myself a letter grade as much as I would give myself an incomplete, but if their comments, shows potential, encouraging progress, things like that might be what I would include, because I feel really good about the team we have in place. I feel really good about the processes that we're enabling and enacting and requiring. It's attention to detail, it's rigor, it's process. It is less ad hoc reactive stuff. We're planning ahead. We're thinking about what things could go wrong. How are we going to respond to those kinds of things? Even when we can't control what's going to happen, we're getting prepared for what might happen. So I feel really good about that. I feel like we are stepping away from the sort of chaotic nature that has in some cases been characteristic of the federal government these days, and I feel good about our progress.
So in 2022, while you were still treasurer with 2 years left in your term, you ran to be governor. 2 years later, you ran as Secretary of State. You were reported to be considering a possible run for U.S. Senate when Senator Merkley was considering retiring. How are you juggling this very important job that voters elected you to do with your own political goals?
Look, the fastest way to become an ex-politician is to focus on a job you don't have. And there is more than enough for me and for everybody I have the privilege of working with to work on right now in this moment. I think if people were unsure about why the secretaries of state mattered in years past, they're not under any illusion about that, especially in this room now. We have plenty to do. Even if we had come into an office that was marked by stability and productivity prior to our arrival, we would have plenty to do. We weren't. We have a lot to repair, a lot to improve, and a lot to deal with on the incoming front. So that is my full attention. My every waking thought is about how do we do this job and protect the system of elections we have in Oregon? How do we hold government accountable? How do we do our job and contribute to the effectiveness of Oregon government? I feel like our biggest danger right now is people feeling that cynicism, giving in to skepticism, disengaging. That's when things get really scary. And I don't have to convince anybody in this room of that, but we've all got a role to play in making sure that government is accountable and effective and that we're inviting people in. So that's all I'm focused on.
And it has been a major goal for you and for prior secretaries of state and election officials around the country to try to improve confidence in our election system. It doesn't seem like, despite all the best efforts people have been putting into this for the last 4 years, that much has changed. We still have a sizable minority, very vocal minority of people who do not trust our elections. What are you doing to try to convince people that Oregon is running fair, accurate, free elections?
We're trying to show people in ways they can see and feel and touch, and all of you have a role in this as well. We did a couple of examples of this leading up to the election in May, and I expect we will, in advance of May 2026 and November 2026, ballot ride-alongs. So we took television stations with us and filmed every step of what happens after a ballot is turned in. It's a little bit like in a legislative campaign where people knock on doors. It's slower, but it's really durable. People remember when a candidate knocks on their door. Am I right? Some of you have had that experience. You remember who showed up and the conversation you had with them. People remember if they've gone to a clerk's office and seen the process, seen all the controls and all the security and all the double checks that go into that process. We want to make sure that that's more available for people. So we'll do more of that with media. All of you can go visit your county clerks. Tim Scott would be glad to have you, probably not all in one group, but you can see what happens, and then you will be that credible person. No one believes anything any more than someone they trust. So when you encounter someone who says it doesn't work or it can't be trusted, you can talk about how every ballot has a barcode on it, only one ballot to one person, how the signatures are verified forensically, how ballots and envelopes are separated so there is complete anonymity to the ballot, how those ballots are reviewed by multi-partisan election boards. And I say multi-partisan because it sometimes can be 3 parties, but no boards with only one party. How even Dennis Richardson, we talked about him a moment ago, said it really well. You can't hack paper ballots. We can audit these things after the fact. So all of us in this room and anyone else outside of this room who is well equipped can be that person to talk to skeptical people, engage them, ask them, understand their concerns, and help to address them in a way that encourages that confidence and participation. I think we are making progress, not as fast as I would like, but I think we're on the right track.
So one high-profile blemish before you took office was the revelation that data errors at the DMV led to hundreds of people being registered to vote who should not have been, and a few dozen of those people were confirmed to have returned ballot envelopes. Your office and the Department of Justice recently confirmed that you're not moving forward with criminal charges against any of these people who voted after being errantly registered. Can you explain how you came to that decision and what you've been doing to make sure that a mistake like that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, we appreciate the feedback that we got from the Department of Justice. This is an example. When we came into office, we were told by our predecessors that they had referred some of these cases to the Department of Justice. We found subsequently that they had not, so we needed to take care of that. And we have learned, in fact, even before we heard from the Department of Justice, we have definitely changed some of our procedures. So I think we have addressed the issues that they identified. As it relates to automatic voter registration, the issues that were surfaced were the result of poor execution. It's worth saying this was not anything that individual people did. It's what government did wrong. And the proof of the effectiveness of what we've been doing since is contained in an external audit we received recently that does say the steps we have taken are already having an effect. These are things like the fact that we hired a person whose sole focus is to oversee that program, that matches a person who has been hired at the DMV to do the same thing. It's a matter of having control files precede the data that comes from the DMV, saying we're going to send you 1,762 records, and then we can see, did we get 1,762 records? It's a sampling process, so random sample goes back to the DMV on a periodic basis to say, check these again, a double check. There are things inside the DMV and their operations as well, which we are verifying. A couple of weeks ago, maybe longer than that now, we had our first visit by a team of people from the Secretary of State's office, which included elections, election staff, IT staff, audit staff, and county clerks to make sure that those things are happening at the DMV as they have been committed to. And all of these add up to what we perceive as a floor, not a ceiling. So we're continuing to make sure that we can identify those additional opportunities. So I think people can feel good about the direction we're headed.
All right, we've got time for about 2 more questions. Okay. First, going to ask you to think back on your time as treasurer. Treasurer Steiner recently announced that Oregon needs to reduce the percentage of its retirement investments in private equity, which during your tenure increased from about 21% when you took office to about 28% when you were leaving. Do you stand by the decisions to increase Oregon's share of retirement investments in private equity?
So I understand why this is an important question. There's so much that is riding on the decisions around the pension. For one, it's 400,000 people who devoted their careers to public service, who rely on those returns to buy groceries and pay rent. And for another, when returns don't match the needs, it means we have to put more tax dollars into the system, and they're less available to hire teachers and firefighters. But every Treasury administration faces a really difficult set of questions about how to maximize risk-adjusted returns over time. And if you have a crystal ball that's reliable, you could do really well. Unfortunately, we don't. We can only look backwards and say what happened. So in any moment, the treasurer, the investment council have to weigh those factors, and that's why as has been reported, I was asking questions about that during my time as treasurer. I'm confident that Treasurer Steiner and the investment council continue to ask those questions and make the right decisions or the right choices as they see it in the moment. And sometimes it's worth remembering too, the numbers move not as a result of an active choice, but as a result of where the markets are moving as well. But tough choices, I think the Treasurer Steiner and the Investment Council will continue to wrestle with those and keep their obligations in mind.
All right, and my last question, which actually does come from a couple City Club members here. What are your primary concerns about running a successful, fair, and accurate election in 2026? And how can the people in this room help with those efforts?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing right now is just people being confident and prepared to participate in all of their roles as voters, as advocates, as champions for people participating. Sometimes I get asked, are we going to have elections in 2026 and 2028? And I want to be really clear, we will. The United States has done a lot of things, but one thing we don't do in the United States is cancel elections. We don't do that. Think about the history of this country. We've had pandemics, we've had floods, we've had earthquakes, we've had fires, we've had wars. But what do we not do in the face of all that? We don't cancel elections. It doesn't happen. So make sure you're telling that to everyone. Talk about that. That's how we build the expectation. We build the resilience. Remember the line about Postal Service, sleet, snow, hail? I'm here to tell you the Postal Service has nothing on elections workers. Talk about that.
All right, and we'll now move to questions from City Club members for about 10 minutes. Please line up in front of the microphone held by Shoshana Baird. And please respect the time of everyone who wants to ask questions. Keep your own under 30 seconds. And please begin with your name and confirm that you are a City Club member before you ask your question.
Win Wakala, City Club member. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was very happy. I got to work elections in 3 different counties.
Great.
Till 4 a.m. one time, counting the last ballots that went through the voting machine. And I know in Oregon, at least, the voting machines are not connected to the internet.
Never.
And everybody, Trump's always trying to say they're rigged and all that. Are they the same in other states?
I think the answer to that is yes. The tabulation machines are never connected to the internet. They are air-gapped. They are inside secure facilities. It can't happen. Wow, an objective yes/no question. I was expecting lots of judgment and nuance, but that's coming now, Sam.
Thank you. Sam Metz, City Club member. First, thank you for honoring the naked bus riders by wearing bicycle socks.
No, thank you. Yes, absolutely.
In the last presidential election, 41% of Oregonians voted for Donald Trump. How do you resolve your personal reaction to executive orders with the 41% of your constituents who voted for the president issuing the executive orders?
It's a good question. I have gotten very comfortable with the idea of being able to fill multiple roles at the same time. So yeah, I'm an Oregonian with opinions, whether or not I'm elected. Then I put my hat on as Secretary of State and say my obligation is to protect the right of those people to vote as they want, even if I don't agree with them. And I don't. I did not vote for President Trump. That's no secret. But that is separate from what the Constitution really says really clearly. All of us who watched the inauguration watched him swear to uphold and defend the Constitution. It says really clearly in Article 1, Section 4, that is not among his powers. He can talk about things. You probably all heard this acronym, though, TACO, Trump always chickens out. I think there's a reason we have not seen an executive order around vote by mail. There's a lot of talk about it, but as soon as it comes, I can tell you we will use every power in our possession, at our disposal, to defend the right of Oregonians to choose how we conduct our elections.
Clay Kruger, city member. I'm wondering how you think resources should be divided between counties and state in terms of elections, considering that especially smaller counties, their income is much more volatile than the state.
That's a good question. I don't even know if I would say it's more volatile. It's just less in lower and smaller counties. It's a smart observation that not many people are aware of. We ask a lot of county elections offices, and as a state, we don't contribute all that much. There's some limited grant dollars for equipment and that sort of thing, but mostly counties are on their own for conducting elections that are not their own elections. They can, in some cases, they can bill special districts that are conducting elections, but when it comes to federal and state elections, we're just imposing it on them. So I would like us to be able to do more. One example of that, most everybody in here is Multnomah County voters. Any Clackamas and Washington, this would apply to you as well. There's something in those counties and a couple others in Oregon called ballot tracks. And if any of you have signed up for that, it's an opportunity to get a text message or an email or both at 3 key moments in the election process. One comes and says your ballot's on the way. It's a nice thing. You can look for it in the mail. You know if something has gone wrong, if it doesn't show up soon. And get another one when you've returned your ballot. Your ballot has been received. And then there's a third one, sometimes really close to the second one, that says your signature has been verified and your ballot will be counted. These are all things that now, having talked to 35 counties, they would like to do. I think it's a nice confidence booster. People can feel and see where their ballot is in the process. The only reason I've identified that all counties are not doing this is cost. I think that's a good investment, a relatively affordable one that we can make as a state and make sure that every voter, every county has access to that. So the short answer to your question is more money needs to go to counties. You bet.
Chris Kobe, I'm a member of the City Club. My question goes to both voting and your experience in the legislature and public policy. After Tuesday's results in California and elsewhere, there's increased interest in redistricting by various states. I'd appreciate your comments on whether Oregon should do that. And the second and affiliated question is, what do you think about a Citizens Redistricting Commission for the purpose of redistricting?
Yeah, two good questions on redistricting. Well, in theory, of course, redistricting should be a mechanism to make sure that districts reflect communities, and that is hard. I understand why California did what it did. I'm disheartened by the country moving in that direction, but I understand that as a response, and in the grand scheme of defending democracy, that may be a necessary step. It would be for the legislature to do, not for me. But let me make a more broad comment, which gets to your question about a citizens commission. I was on the redistricting committee in the legislature in 2011 and saw that process work for the first time in something like 80 years. But I want to caution you, everyone in this room is too smart to fall for this, but just because a a district has a funny shape is not evidence of gerrymandering. I say that because the statute says very clearly it has to have exactly the same number of people, has to be compact and contiguous, and it cannot divide a community of interest. I pause there for a moment because community of interest is not defined. Is that a city, a county, a school district, a watershed? Yes. And if you have to have the exact same number of people, you might have to create a funny bulge on one side to get that extra 128 people. As to a citizens commission, maybe. You didn't use a word that is often used in questions like that, an independent commission. And I say independent from whom? There are going to be people, there are going to be Oregonians, someone will appoint them. I want to make sure that we have a system that reflects the population, that allows people to have a chance to elect representatives they have confidence in, but it is not an exact science. We're going to keep trying to get better at it. You're back, Wynn.
I did elections before we had vote by mail too, and back then you only checked every 10th signature, because the people at the polling places were supposed to know their neighbors and know that that was them. But now that it's vote by mail, every signature is checked.
That's right.
And do you want to explain a little bit about what happens if the signature doesn't the signature on the back of the envelope doesn't match the one in the file?
Yeah, you're all going to be sound like election experts when you get to use this technical term. That presents an opportunity for people to cure their signature. So they'll get a communication from the elections office that says there's a problem with your signature, and they have some time to come and resolve that. When people complain about that, I think that's a great opportunity to say, see, the system works. You can't have somebody else sign your ballot. One funny anecdote I got from one county clerk said, she said some people come in and say, well, I'm angry when I sign the ballot sometimes. And the clerk had a great response. She said, well, give me the angry signature. So your news you can use, your public service announcement, if you go to the DMV or you know someone else who's going to the DMV, encourage them, use a real signature on those pads. It's a little, it's a little funky with those dot matrix things, but do it right, because that's what county clerks use to match, and you will save everyone time.
John Stride,
John.
City Club member.
Yes, I imagine. President of the City Club, in fact, right?
So a point and a question.
Okay.
First point, City Club did a comprehensive research study on independent redistricting commissions some time ago that you might refer to in terms of the public policy we adopted at that time. Second question, you commented on a lawsuit that you're now involved in to protect voter information. Mm-hmm. A few weeks ago, we had Attorney General Dan Rayfield here talking about how he was up to his neck in lawsuits against the Trump administration. How do you coordinate with the Attorney General's office, and what support do you get or ask for in protecting Oregon citizens?
Yeah, the Department of Justice is our lawyer, so it is that kind of coordination, and we are talking frequently about strategy. We have a general counsel in our office that manages that relationship. I am not a lawyer, so I'm not qualified to have a lot of legal technical opinions. I have policy opinions and that sort of thing. But we're working well together, and I have confidence that when we get to make that argument in court, we'll make it very well.
And I will take the opportunity to do the last question. Shoshana Baird, very much a City Club member. You mentioned that one of the things you prided in your office is the efforts to look forward and not just be reactive.
Yes.
As you look forward to 2026, what are the things that you are doing to try and prepare for upcoming elections that maybe are different from this year? And what would you need to be doing to give yourself an A grade at the end of next year?
I don't think I can give myself an A grade until the term is over, but so here's another very practical thing, and you all can help on this as well. I am concerned about less in Portland than the rest of the state, but the reliability of the Postal Service. They obviously play an important role in our system, especially now that we have moved to postmark date as a deadline rather than receipt. So in some parts of the state, Medford comes to mind in particular, the path that a ballot or any piece of mail follows has changed. So if somebody in one side of Medford is mailing their ballots in, it comes to Portland before it goes back to the other side of Medford. So that's an example where the efficiency of the post office, that might work for them, but it's at odds with elections in some ways. So we may be back to the days before the postmarks were involved in saying, yes, you could mail it in, but if you want to take more time, if you're past the Thursday before the Tuesday, you really should find the drop box. That's easier for some people in some parts of the state than others, but we're trying to anticipate that, to encourage people to use drop boxes. That's a place where you can help, and I think we want to be creative about making that efficient and frankly more fun. Let's think about ways that there can be. There's a national group called Party at the Polls. We don't really have polls, but maybe there's parties at the drop boxes we can have to encourage people that would be a nice place to be at some point during the elections. Oh yes, you need the mic back.
Yes. Thank you. That concludes our program for this afternoon. Thanks to Secretary Reed and Ms. Shumway for helping us. Yes, thank you. We are certainly all smarter and better informed by having you come join us today. We appreciate that. And one more shout out to our season sponsors, the AARP Oregon, Chevron, Fight Against Sex Trafficking, and the Don Sterling Fund at the Oregon Community Foundation. Now, if you want to become a member, go to cityclub.org/membership, and remember that $40 reduction in the fee, new 40. Okay, thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to be among a group of people that are so knowledgeable and committed to our community and to good public policy. Thank you.